Today, we're going to talk about one of the most misunderstood tea categories in the West, and that is the fermented tea category. Why? Let's just start with the basics here. All teas in this category have in common that they are intentionally fermented at some stage in their production. China is by far the largest producer of the fermented tea category, yet only 3% of teas produced in China are fermented teas, which is wild if you ask me, because there are a ton of these on the market, but that just means that China's producing so much more of the other teas. And also, before we jump into this fermentation discussion, I do want to mention that a lot of older books on tea will refer to what we've been calling oxidation as fermentation. And why that is a completely different discussion, but for the sake of our discussions, oxidation refers to the process by which tea leaves brown over time, and that's what, the prevention of which gives you green tea. And when you let tea leaves oxidize, you get oolong and black teas. We've talked about that at length. Fermented teas are allowed to ferment in many different ways. Really, when we're talking about Chinese fermented teas, you have a large grouping of them called heicha, or dark tea, and they're made in several different provinces. You have another category called pu'erh, and pu'erh has to be produced in Yunnan province. There's a geographical indication on this style of tea that says that pu'erh tea has to come from Yunnan province. So anything that mimics it that's not from Yunnan cannot be called pu'erh. You can either call it a heicha or you can call it a fermented tea. So, while we're talking about Yunnan, let me just show you what I mean by pu'erh. Pu'erh is often pressed into a cake like this. This is called a bing. And these things are often aged, and the characteristics will change over time if stored correctly. And collectors will collect these and spend thousands of dollars on these, if they were stored correctly. When we're talking about pu'erh in Yunnan, there are really two styles. This one's called sheng, S-H-E-N-G. It starts out like a green tea. The leaves are plucked and withered and then fixed, and then they are pressed into a cake form and allowed to dry, and then undergo slow fermentation over many years. You can still drink them quite young, and they'll be more like a green tea. But these things, there's some fermentation happening in these when stored correctly. The other form of pu'erh that you get from Yunnan is called shou, or S-H-O-U. This varies a little bit differently from this sort of production. After the tea leaves are fixed, they will be pile fermented. I mean, there are just mountains of tea leaves, and sometimes they're inoculated with some bacteria and yeasts, and essentially you're forcing the fermentation on these teas, and they're completely different than something like the sheng here. All around China, there are these just amazing variants of fermented teas that have become quite famous. Like this one here, like this Luan basket. Take a moment to notice the basketry on my table, right? These are hundreds of years. Different areas of China have been creating these specific styles of fermented teas. And this is just packed with tea in here. This is from 1995. You can see the leaves in there. This one here is rolled into this shape. This is from 2012. And this is so tightly rolled that in order to get the tea leaves out of here, you often have to saw these into pieces. This one here is another loosely packed bamboo basket. About 1 kilogram of leaf in there. These have been allowed to ferment, and they have really interesting characteristics. They're all completely different. In addition to the cake format, you also see a lot of brick format. Here's a brick of tea that I think it's 3 or 4 kilograms. I mean, this thing is heavy. And the other thing about this is it's so tightly pressed. You can see that a little bit here. It's near impossible to break this. If I can't break it with my hands. I can't smash it into my counter. In order to get into this tea, I mean, you've got to saw little pieces off. And that's, a lot of times you'll see tea merchants that'll saw these into cubes and sell them that way. And then, you just have to steep pieces of it over time. But it's just such a fascinating tea category. And, the people go crazy over these bings. spend thousands of dollars on them, collect them and store them in many ways. Like there are tea hobbyists that just focus on this style of tea, and for good reason. It tastes delicious. Some of the tea raw product that goes into making these is from older trees, and that's some of the most sought after bings on the market today, wherein you have like a wild tea tree or an unpruned tea tree where folks are like literally climbing the trees, harvesting the leaves, and then processing them into these cakes and aging them. They become collector's items. So it's a really fun category to get into. I personally like some of these like funkier ones that you can find on the market today. Like I did bring some of these back from some of my travels. I do like some of these odd bricks. I mean, these things are just crazy. I mean, you could see stems in here. I mean, this is not high quality tea material in this brick, but the tea is just interesting. Like, let me just show you a little bit closer so you can see the stem content. All those light pieces there are pieces of tea stems. So, I can only imagine how they're harvesting the leaves that are destined for this. And I really question, like, why is it pressed so tightly? I don't know, but this thing's a weapon. I mean, this really concludes our journey of the 6 types of teas. And, if you really want to look at a good overview of, what goes into the processing of each tea type, check out my Patreon page. There's a link in the description. There's a free infographic that outlines the 6 types of tea and really what processing steps the leaves must undergo for the finished tea to be considered of a certain type. And that's a really good tool for your tea education and as you continue on your tea journey. And the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about what goes into tea classification. Why classify teas? Why do I do it? For education. I feel like classifying teas is one of the best way to educate folks that are trying to just navigate some of the confusion or sift through some of the mystique marketing that's out there around some of the tea retailers. Get yourself some fermented teas. You can't go wrong. I mean, you can go wrong because some of them are pretty funky, but it's just a really cool category. So yeah, thank you for joining me again for this video. Please hit like and subscribe below. Just helps me, gives me the impetus to continue to create these videos for you. And I hope that you get value from them and this really fuels your tea journey. So again, thank you so much and have a great day. Bye-bye.